off. So welcome again, everyone. Like I said, I'm Christo van Skalkwyk from the African Circular Economy Network, or ACEN for short. I'll be facilitating the session for today. And just a few house rules before we start, so the session will be recorded. I will share the recording for everyone that registered afterwards in a follow-up email. So if anyone couldn't join or you want to review the session, you can do that. And then for now, we're just keeping everyone on mute and cameras off. There will be a Q&A session later that we will allow everyone to unmute and interact a bit and ask questions. In the meantime, if you have any comments or questions, please do add them to the chat. So just a quick overview of the agenda for today. I'll do a very brief introduction to ACEN, who we are, what we do. Then I'll hand over to my colleague Chris to just give a bit of introduction and context of the topic that we're discussing today. And then I'll hand over to the FlipFlopi colleague Zoe and Davina to go into a bit of more detail about what the FlipFlopi project is and this amazing toolkit that they have developed. And then, like I said, we'll have a quick Q&A session at the end that we can get some interaction. So quickly on ACEN, for those that are not aware of who we are, what we do. So the African Circular Economy Network is Africa's original think and do tank for circular economy transformation, connecting over 500 practitioners across 42 countries. And we deliver tangible impact through project implementation, research, knowledge sharing, and capacitation. So the vision of ACEN is to build a restorative African economy that generates well-being and prosperity inclusive of all its people. And we do this through new forms of economic production, consumption, and do this while maintaining and regenerating the environmental resources. So that's a mouthful, but after this, I will share a lot of links that you can see how you can get engaged with ACEN and read up a bit more on our website and our different platforms that we do have. So we work towards this vision through our 3 strategic priorities, which are connect, transform, and empower. So on the connect side, we build and strengthen Africa's most comprehensive network of circular economy practitioners, and we foster collaboration across countries, sectors, and different stakeholder groups. In the transform column, we deliver impactful programs and projects, like we mentioned, that translate the circular economy principles into tangible business models, policy frameworks, and systematic changes. And then on the empower side, which this webinar is a part of, is that we equip our stakeholders with knowledge, skills, and the tools needed to become effective circular economy championships. And I think this webinar is an excellent example of how we try and share and connect people with these tools and these amazing resources that are out there that you might not be aware of. Then just a quick overview of ACEN's representation on Africa. So like I mentioned, we have over 500 members across 42 African countries. And our main chapters, just to highlight, we have a very active chapter in Nigeria, in Rwanda, Kenya, and our biggest chapter at this point in time, South Africa. So like I mentioned, I'll share some details on how you can get involved and join these chapters. And with that quick overview, I'll hand over to my colleague Chris, just to give us a short introduction of today's session. So I know Chris himself was involved with the FlipFlopi project. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Christo, and welcome to everybody who's online. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming through from these presenters. It's such an exciting project. So my name is Chris White. I am the Business Development Manager for ACEN. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce the FlipFlopi project. They're based in the Lamu archipelago, the north coast of Kenya. But FlipFlopi is not just an organization, it's a movement. And you'll see that on their website. They call themselves a movement. And they have a mission to end single-use plastics and ensure all other plastics become part of the circular economy. I have, as Christo says, I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with this team since 2018 when I first engaged on discussions around materials, particularly in terms of looking at the design around their recycled plastic dhow. to more recently on the Sustainable Manufacturing and Environmental Pollution Program, or SMEP, which has supported the project since 2024. FlipFlopi is what I like to call a social construct, because what they do is so much more than just recycling. It's an amazing group of people, passionate and driven in terms of what they do, and they're a great bunch of people to work with. So without further ado, I will hand over to Davina and Zoe to introduce themselves and go through the presentation. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Davina Ngain. I'm a program manager at the FlipFlopi project, where I've worked initially as a volunteer since 2019 across different aspects. I'm based in Cape Town, originally from Kenya, and I'm excited to show what we do.
Thanks, Davina. Your microphone's actually coming through a little bit quietly for me. I don't know if the others found that as well. But yeah, great. Thanks very much for the introduction. Really nice to see everybody coming in the meeting chat and telling us where you're from. So thanks so much for joining from all over the place. Very exciting to see that. So my name is Zoe Lenkovic. I am the founder and director of the Global Waste Lab, and I've been working with the FlipFlopi project on developing the toolkit, which we're going to talk you through shortly. So I think Davina is going to start with a few slides, and then I will give you a walkthrough of how the website works, how the toolkit all hangs together, and then I'll pass back to Davina to tell you more about the FlipFlopi and the amazing projects they've got on. So thank you.
Are you still there, Davina?
I think we've lost her.
Yes. And
There.
yeah, unfortunately, I have a little bit of a problem with my laptop, but hopefully you can hear me and you can see me.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So yes, as I introduce myself, my name is Davina, and I'm a program manager at the FlipFlopi project. And as Chris described, we're a circular economy-based project based in Lamu, which is an archipelago on the north coast of Kenya. You've already met Zoe, but there are a few team members that made this toolkit possible, and their names are on the screen. But there's also a strong team in Lamu. We're about 40 people who have made the lessons learned possible. So while I can't list all their names, just to thank them at the start of this webinar. If you can move on to the next slide, please, Crystal. So I know that based on the audience, a lot of you know about the statistics around plastic pollution and specifically its impact on marine environments. So I won't focus too much on that. What I'd like to do is just take you through the history of FlipFlopi, who we are and where we've come from. So the project started in 2017, so that's about 8 years ago. And it was started in response to the growing amount of, or the growing volumes of plastic waste which were washing up on the shores of East Africa. And as you can see on the top left, this is probably a site that is common to many of you. And for our founders, this was a very sad sight, but it also gave them an idea that something was possible to transform this into something that could tell the story of just how bad the pollution problem was getting and how it was impacting small communities such as Lamu specifically. And in brainstorming and trying to come up with an idea, for them it was critical to come up with a solution that would represent the community where the idea was coming from, but would also represent the community where the problem was being faced the most. And the symbol, the idea, the innovation that they came up with was to build a Swahili dhow. So for centuries, the Swahili dhow has connected the coast of East Africa with the Middle East and Asia, allowing for trade and the share of cultures. And while nothing like this had been done before, they were adventurous, they were innovators, and they were sure that something like this was possible. And they came together, and over 2 years, the dhow was built. It's 100% built from recycled plastic. It's built in Lamu with the same tools, the same tradition that they've used to build wooden dhows for centuries. And it's a symbol that tells the story of Lamu. And this locally designed, locally built boat, the goal was also to create something that would have ownership within the community. Next slide, please. And once the boat was built, we decided to sail it as we do with boats. First, we initially sailed it across the Indian Ocean from the north coast of Kenya to Zanzibar in Tanzania. Then we sailed it around Lake Victoria, which is Africa's largest freshwater lake. And in each expedition, we met up with communities such as ours, geographically remote, suffering from increasing volumes of plastic pollution. We brought together everyone from fishermen and school children to artists and policymakers with a goal to inspire a movement, people like us who had seen the problem, who are innovating on the solution, to spotlight the local solutions that were already existing, to educate people around the scope of the problem and what other problems it was creating, and to create policy that would support movements like ours, whether it's recycling, whether it's arts, to be able to tackle this problem. And it was an exciting opportunity. But what we did see and what we did arrive at, especially after our Lake Victoria expedition in 2020 and 2021, was that while we were bridging a knowledge deficit gap, there was still room on the ground to create systems and infrastructure that would allow communities to make different decisions. Next slide, please. And this birthed our work that we now have in Lamu. So Lamu is where the DAO was built. And Lamu is now the headquarters of the work that we do. And basically over the last 4 years, with the support of SMEP, as Chris mentioned, we built infrastructure and systems around recovery, around training, and around data. And these are all rooted in our ethos of community and of tradition. Next slide, please. So what does this mean on the ground? It means that over the last 4 years, we put together infrastructure and systems to recover plastic and to transform it into something of value. So beyond our boat, looking at artisanal furniture, other boats, anything of value that we can create from the plastic, which is inundating places like Lamu. And this has been putting together ethical and fair systems, so standards of operations, putting together fair labor standards, considering gender and social inclusion, looking at ethical wages, training and capacity building to make sure that the community where the solution is coming from has the capacity to run it for the long term. And what we've seen, and I think what many of us have seen in the communities that we live in, is that for many of our countries, the informal sector does uphold waste management. And they've done an amazing job, but often at social and economic cost to the people who are running this. It's unfortunately a very exploitative industry, and doing it right costs money. But what we've put in place allows us to see what it does take to do it right, especially in geographically remote areas like ours, where logistic challenges and economic challenges are much higher. It's also allowed us to address the misconception that plastic recovery is charity work, because it isn't. It's a public good, and it's a right for everyone to live in a clean environment. But lastly, it's reaffirmed our belief that the value chain for plastic is broken. So right at the start, when we had our advocacy tool, as Chris mentioned, our goal was the elimination of single-use plastics. And this work on the ground has just reaffirmed the importance of policies like that, because what we're seeing from recovery and trying to process these items is there is a lot of unrecyclable items, there's a lot of mixed polymers, an increasing amount of additives that is making recycling difficult. And basically, without readdressing and looking at this value chain, a circular economy is harder to reach. Next slide, please. And this groundwork has basically fed into the institutional work that we're doing at a more strategic level. So the experience and the expertise that we've gotten from 4 years of being in Lamu, and a further 7 years, or not, a further 3 years, that makes a further 3 years of the innovation and advocacy work that we've done, has resulted first in our policy involvement. So at the local level, because waste management is a devolved function, we're looking at developing a consortium of interested actors to create solid waste management policies at the Lamu level. But further than that, looking at single-use plastic at the regional level as an East African community, understanding that unless we align as the 8 East African countries, it's very hard to tackle the problem of single-use plastic. So drafting a bill around single-use plastic and a ban on unnecessary single-use plastic, engaging people on the ground, engaging policymakers to see what can make this a reality in our community. We're also conducting marine litter research. So again, we're in an archipelago, so our situation is quite unique. We're not just dealing with municipal waste, but we're dealing with marine litter waste that is coming in with the tides, and which is very hard to stop. So in our part of the Western Indian Ocean, there's very little research when it comes to marine litter. So basically building the bridge here, or bridging the gap, getting data to understand what is accumulating, where it's accumulating, the impact it's having on critical habitats like mangroves. And Lamu has 70% of Kenya's mangroves, and understanding how this is affected by the tides, by the monsoons, so that we can basically adapt our recovery system to better take care of these critical ecosystems. And to support that is training. So our training element is to bridge the gap in capacity, because circular economy for plastics is quite new within the region that we're working in. So how can we build the right skills through training, both theoretical and practical, to ensure that this is a long-term endeavor? So we move from just being a community actor within the space to an institution that is creating something that is adaptable and flexible for the long-term benefit of Lamu. Next slide, please. And to support this, if you can just click once more, is data. So this is a representation of the data that we hold. And these are the pretty visualizations, but backing them is thousands of rows of data. And we collect data from everything from plastic recovery to processing to training. And from the beginning, this has been quite critical to correct it accurately, to verify it, and to make sure that we look at the data and what it's telling us, because it allows us to see where we're being efficient, where we're being inefficient. It allows us to understand our costs, and it gives us evidence when we're presenting Lamu as a case study. It gives us evidence when we're saying some things do not work, there's a value chain which is broken. And this is quite critical for us. We're also proud at this point to be able to say that each kilo of plastic that we're able to process can be verified. So right from the start, when we collect it, as it goes through a material recovery facility and it turns into a good, we can verify that this passed through an ethical value chain. So these are the elements of building a system that can work, a system free of exploitation, and a system that could be replicable in areas such as ours. Next slide, please. And this has led us to the development of the toolkit, which we'll discuss. And it's basically the lessons learned over the last 4 years of engaging in Lamu, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And our hope here was, in case there's someone else going through the same situation, setting up something within their community, they don't have to go through the same mistakes. They can basically leapfrog some of the things that we've learned along the way. So I'll hand over to Zoe right now to take us through the toolkit.
Thank you so much, Davina. And I know the FlipFlopi project to me is one of the most impressive organizations like this in the world that I've come across. And just hearing you talking through all of the different aspects of your work and, giving us that great tour is such a pleasure. So thank you very much. And it's been a real honor to support the team on this small project. So I just want to, just as a little bit of background, well, actually, first, I've been observing in the meeting chat where we've got people joining us from today. So I've counted so far Mauritius, Rwanda, Ethiopia, India, Egypt, Cameroon, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. This is awesome, guys. And I know that the Africa Circular Economy Network, so Christo and Chris, thank you so much, will be making this presentation available to people in many, many further places as well, which is important because I work with organizations all over the world, and we find that the challenges that the FlipFlopi project are encountering are pretty consistent across all of the small islands and remote and more rural places where groups are trying to tackle the plastic pollution challenge. Plastic, as Davina said, the value chain is broken. It's such a low value material, which makes it great for packaging, but terrible at end of life. It's impossible really to collect it, sort it, clean it, process it, get it back to market for the same value that it can be sold for. So it is an ongoing cost to communities and an ongoing cost to society. So what the FlipFlopi does, importantly, is adding value to that plastic in situ. So where they are collecting it, they're doing their best to add value to the material, so that they're not just at the mercy of the global plastics prices, because that's never going to cover your costs. So moving on then, I was really pleased to be invited to support the FlipFlopi with the development of the toolkit, which is the culmination of many years' work by many people, as Davina said. So this was absolutely my pleasure, and we were supported by the brilliant Diana Fish, who developed the website. It was quite a complex build, and you'll see why shortly. So to start with, what we did was we Katerina from the FlipFlopi project and I ran a focus group with some of our target audience, so other people who are trying to tackle the plastic pollution or plastic waste situation in their communities. And we asked them, you know, what information do you need? What level of information do you need? And importantly, how do you like to absorb that information or access it? And they said, look, please don't give us long PDFs. It's too much. We'll never find the information that we need. So please break it down as much as possible so that we can read it when we need it. Okay, so the FlipFlopi Toolkit, and you can see the website is toolkit.theflipflopi.com, and I believe that's in the chat as well. So here's the toolkit website. First thing I want to draw your attention to here is the search function up at the top, because that is really powerful. So if you are coming here for help with a particular issue or concern or question, my first tip would be go for the search function. Now I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of the toolkit website, just so that you can navigate yourselves around it easily. So here we are. This is the original FlipFlopi DAO. A word about our sponsors, SMEP, the Sustainable Manufacturing and Environmental Pollution Programme. So what's in the toolkit? Well, we broke all of the information down, considering there was 8 different authors and a lot of different topics that we had to cover. So the first thing we did was split it into the plastic recycling essentials and scaling your impact. So you can see the content here under the plastic recycling essentials. It's about engaging with your community, getting that plastic collected and onto your site, sorting it, cleaning it, overcoming common challenges. Then how are they recycling those materials? Importantly, how are they making a business of that? Yeah, how are they getting revenue in to the FlipFlopi from the plastics that they're collecting? Some really good advice there. And then finally, tracking the impact, which is very important. If like Davina said, this is not charity work, but unfortunately, so many organizations still depend on grant funding. So you need to be able to track your impact, both from running it as a business enterprise perspective and also in terms of being able to attract investors and donors and so on. Because if they can see that you are really on top of what you're doing, then they're going to have more confidence that you are a good investment for them. Then moving across to the other side, scaling your impact. We've got the research and development, which FlipFlopi are outstanding at. How to run training programs, and Katerina has shared slides that you can literally use in the classroom, ready to go. How to form partnerships, especially with governments and your local authorities, to help improve those waste systems so that it's not all on you. How to impact policy making, and finally, how to run these very powerful campaigns that the FlipFlopi again has become known for. So taking you back up to the top then, I'm going to show you how the navigation works. So you see at the top here, we have plastic recycling essentials and scaling your impact. This is where all of the content of the toolkit is contained. So I'm going to click on plastic recycling essentials. We can see this blue bar that's opened up with the 5 chapters. that I just explained. And here they all are, the 5 chapters. Now I'm going to take you through to tracking impact, because this is one that I feel is really, really important for all of you here. And there's a lot of good advice here. So you can see here we've got the impact essentials and your key steps for monitoring and evaluation. So for example, if we come into here, what have we got? We've got information, how to run your baseline survey. So what's your starting point? What's your theory of change? So how are your activities going to lead to certain outcomes? Presumably less plastic pollution, healthier environments, that kind of thing. Really important to learn how to put together a good theory of change. Your indicators and targets. What are you measuring yourselves against? And then your data management. So let's just have a look in here, because look, I've worked with a lot of community-based organizations and NGOs, and small businesses as well. And I always say, look, collect good data. Please collect good data. And quite often I think that people don't really appreciate what I mean by good data. So it's a delight to be able to show you how the FlipFlopi do it. And throughout the toolkit, where you see these blue boxes, how the FlipFlopi did it, that's their own personal experience. And then the rest of the information in the white or grey areas, that's direct advice for other groups. So for example, here is their collection data on the people who have brought the plastic to the FlipFlopi Centre, how much they brought in, how much they've been paid, broken down into the different types of plastics. And then I'm going to keep going, because look at this. Now this is their sheet for actually processing the plastic. How much have they got? What color? Like, this is granular data. And this is the kind of granularity that is really beneficial for if you want to scale up, or you want to be identifying where your main costs are coming in and this kind of thing. Okay, so look, I won't go on about the data anymore, but please do explore this for yourselves and learn from it. Okay, I'm going to move across to scaling your impact, and you'll see that now that bar turns purple. So we know where we are. Excuse me. And again, we have 5 subsections in scaling your impact: research and development, training, partnerships, policy making, and campaigning. Now we can either use the navigation at the top, or we can have a look down here. So we'll go research and development. Then I'm going to show you the, let's have a look. We've got all of these subsections, go into development. And then I want to show you testing here. There is such a wealth of knowledge that the FlipFlopi team have really generously shared here. Look, we've got our standard operating procedures for plastic identification and testing. If you click on that, it will open a Google Doc with step-by-step how to actually run your tests and record your data, excuse me, so that you can really accelerate your learning, accelerate your progress. Okay. Now, finally, I'm just going to show you in scaling your impact. I'll take you to campaigning. Again, something that the FlipFlopi are outstanding at. We'll just pop into here, driving change, and we're going to look at running a campaign, which is down here. Here we go, running a campaign, step by step. What are we going to do? So let's see. Again, finding your focus, building your case, how the FlipFlopi did it. Some brilliant videos here for you to explore and watch. You know, they've got over 16,000 signatures on their single-use plastics bill petition. Lost the word then. Just so much great advice. Okay, and again, how the FlipFlopi did it. So please do take your time. This is toolkit.theflipflopi.com. It's all here. If you would like to visit the FlipFlopi and learn from them directly, you can see here we have the courses section. You can actually visit their site in Kenya. They run all of these different types of courses, including tailor-made group courses. So depending on what it is specifically that you want to learn. And here we are. There's a picture of their site there in Lamu. And I'm going to just show you where they are on this island archipelago on the east coast of Kenya. There we are on the Indian Ocean. So I've had the pleasure of visiting there, and I encourage all of you to. And please do take your time, explore the toolkit and send us your feedback. We'd love to know what you find helpful, what else you'd like to see. And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you so much for following me through that. And I'm going to pass back to Davina, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about the wonderful things that the FlipFlopi are up to. So thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Yeah, and just to reiterate on the data, how much that supported us, because oftentimes at the start you might not know like what it can be used for, but that granular data has allowed us to build economic models, to understand socioeconomic impact, to build evidence about the value chain, to see where there are gaps, where policy or government or other institutions can support. So please start collecting data, building the systems to make sure that you can verify that data is accurate, building the capacity within your teams, so that they can be able to do that at the department level. I'm a big data nerd, so I'm very excited always when I see the data systems. So over the last 4 years, there's a lot of impact that we've witnessed. To be able to collect and recover plastic, we've had to deploy different recovery models just so that they can fit the context of Lamu, in the context of where the plastic is ending up. So we have an incentivized community collection. So we're trying to encourage communities not to throw away their plastic, to bring them to us. We work with community groups who have legs on the ground. We do cleanups. We engage with beach management units, so working directly with fishermen, because when they go out fishing, they catch plastic within their nets, or sometimes they fish within the mangroves and they find plastics. So how we can recover that from, again, critical habitats. And these multiple methods have resulted in over 415 tons of plastic being collected from this archipelago. And one of the studies we did showed a 22% reduction in recyclable plastics at the landfill. So this was in 2024, I believe. So I'm sure if we did the study again, we can be able to see how much more progress we've made in preventing recyclable plastics from ending up in the environment. Anecdotally, from the municipality, they've reported a 50% reduction in solid waste. So for them, that's a cost and a time saving. So again, it's amazing to be able to put this into context. And because a lot of the plastic that was being disposed in the past was being burnt, we've seen significant GHG emissions. So we've saved over 400 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, so reduced or avoided. Again, that has health benefits. Unfortunately, we don't track those health benefits, but we can extrapolate what is happening when these plastics are not being burnt right next to homes that have people that have children. And again, since we incentivize communities, we've dispersed about $45,000 to about 1,000 community members and groups. And this is not to consider any investment we've made in systems, in infrastructure, any social programs that we've run. It doesn't account for the staff that have been employed and the monthly salary that has been put into this community. This is just direct dispersion to specific community members. Next slide, please. And then on the more technical side of things is, of course, the material that we're dealing with, the plastic. So as Zoe mentioned, our intention is to process as much of this plastic on the island, because once we send it off as baled material to the closest city, which is either Mombasa or Nairobi, the value of that plastic is very low, and it doesn't allow us to sustain parts of our recovery. So what we've tried to do is have R&D at the heart of what we do and see what we can do on the island with these materials. So we've tested multiple materials, multiple processes, multiple types of technology. At the moment, the tech we use is a sheet press and an extruder. So not super high technology, but quite significant in being able to play around with this plastic. And again, there's a uniqueness of being on the coast, because a lot of what we're dealing with is things like ropes and fishing nets and buoys. these don't have a market within the wider plastic value chain. So how can we transform these materials which are washing up on our beaches into our mangroves? How can we transform them into something of value on the island itself? And that's what we've been trying to do. To build a capacity base, as I mentioned, we've trained over 100 youth. So we have courses, some of them are week-long, some of them are 3 months long, and they're a mixture of theoretical and practical knowledge. So everything from the basics of circular economy and community work to how to work with machines, how to build boats, and how to make products as a carpenter from plastic as opposed to wood. You can see on the bottom of the screen, we've had some of Lamu's first female boat builders coming from this course, which has been really amazing to witness. FlipFlopi is no longer alone. She now has a few siblings, so we have 4 boats in total. On the top right, you can see a barge. So that's the latest boat that we built. And why this barge is amazing, it helps us solve a logistics challenge, which is the transportation of high volume items across the archipelago. So you would think, because of course goods are already being traded across different islands, that there are large scale solutions like this. Unfortunately, it's not the case. It's a lot of small boats transporting items, and this can be quite difficult, quite expensive to maintain. So this is a way we've been connecting the islands, making sure plastic is moving seamlessly from one place to another. It's also constructed on 100% from recycled plastic, and the recycled plastic is from Lamu, so that has been amazing to witness. And then to be able to sustain ourselves, we've now looked at artisanal products. So these are products which have tradition and heritage within the Lamu community, and of course innovating on some of these processes, but using plastic. So like on the bottom left, you can see a king's share that we've made. In the past, it would be made from wood, and the white parts would be inserts of ivory, but now we're doing this from plastic. So again, it's innovating and using tradition and heritage and the skills in carpentry and boat building, which have been harnessed for hundreds of years, but using this item, which has been problematic for so long. And this is one of the attempts that we're making to not be fully reliant on grant funding, but to be able to sustain different parts of our recovery through the work that we're doing, but also to retain as much value within the Lamu community, because that is critical for a circular economy to work. And then lastly, looking at education, we host numerous school groups, primary and secondary school children, but we're also piloting a school-based program as well to be able to ensure that right from the primary level, there's understanding of waste, understanding of its interactions with the ecosystem, and hopefully have different behaviors moving forward. Next slide, please. So this pilot has been really amazing, and it has been a pilot because prior to us starting this or putting these operations on the ground, there was no infrastructure, no system that could cope with the waste generated by the archipelago, but coming into the archipelago. And it has taught us that a few things are quite critical when you're doing something like this. The first is infrastructure investment. There needs to be ongoing operational support. So you can't have just a one-off grant because operations have to be built. What we've shared, the data we've shared, for example, didn't look that way on day one. It took time to develop these operations. So ongoing operational support is needed. Partnerships are needed. So with funders, with government, and with institutions to make sure there's a transdisciplinary way, a transdisciplinary approach to setting up these waste management and recovery systems. The policy needs to be right. The foundation for this is correct policy. Otherwise, we'll only be choosing some type of plastic, and other polymers of plastic will still remain in the environment. So for us right now, of course, we're trialing marine gear, understanding how we can R&D that, but there's still a lot of problematic packaging, diapers, and other materials which are difficult to recycle. Over 2 years in one small village, we've removed over 70 tons of textiles only, textiles. And that doesn't even fall into the 415 tons that we processed. So there's materials that we're removing from ecosystems that we're not putting in that big number because it's volumes that we can't process, but we can just remove and safely store. And this is the scope of the problem. And that's why recycling alone is not a solution. And on the basis of this is also putting together the training systems to ensure that the community has a capacity to lead this in the long term. And that's critical to what we've done. And oftentimes we use the word scale. Right now we're serving about 70 to 80% of the archipelago. So we're serving maybe around 40,000 people. That's the reach of our recovery. And our goal is to go to 100%. And scale sometimes is a bit of a scary word in situations like this, because we're dealing with a geographically remote area, which might not have as much plastic as a city, but where the impacts of the plastic are pronounced. So it's not just about moving from 100 tons to 500 tons. It's impossible in our situation like ours. But how can we have true deep impact for the community in terms of social impact, economic impact, and environmental impact? That is what we're trying to achieve. And next slide. So we're excited to sorry, just go back one. We're excited to at least have built the systems, and we're continuing to build systems which are adaptable and flexible, especially as the population grows. We're building the evidence and we're sharing it. And of course, we're building our expertise, and the toolkit is one way that we're sharing this in an open source way, in a free way for people to act upon. And of course, we're always looking for partners, funders, continuous support from government and institutions to create something which is long lasting. Because we're still a pilot, there's still a lot that we're learning. There's still a lot that we can do in terms of sustainability, in terms of the impact that we can have, in terms of learning from new literature, new scholarship, to be able to improve our impact on the ground. And this is something we continuously welcome. Even as we have our toolkit that we're sharing, we're open to hearing from others and working with others, partnering with others to make sure that this solution is something that can work. It can be adopted, it can be entrenched within the community and serve the community and their needs. As Zoe said, the toolkit is online, it's free to access, and we're open to hosting people in Lamu. We love to have people on our site. It's hard sometimes to tell from a few photos and a few discussions what is happening on the ground. It's amazing when you see what is happening on the ground, and hopefully that can inspire the work that you're doing. And lastly, we have a school desk project. Chris, if you can click twice, where we're transforming the plastic that we're collecting into school desks for the community. And this is in response to what we've seen within schools. There's not enough tables and chairs for kids. They're sharing multiple children are sharing desks and tables. Unfortunately, a lot of these were replaced many years ago. So the quality of this is not great. So in terms of education, we're seeing how the waste that we're collecting can be transformed into something of value. We've been flat packing them and teaching the kids how to put the tables and chairs together. So that's something pretty exciting. And I'll share the link through Crystal, but if that is something you can support or share within your networks, it is, again, a community project that we're trying, again, to keep the value within the community. And then for the last slide is just to say thank you. Thank you to Zoe. Thank you to the FlipFlopi team who are not on the call, but they're here in spirit. And thank you to ACEN for hosting us. And then a special, there's a lot of partners we have, but especially just considering our initial funders, UK8 under the SMEP program, and our initial institutional partners, that is Cordio for our marine litter research, and the University of Portsmouth and University of Newcastle and Northumbria for their technical and community support. So yeah, I hope you got something good from this webinar. Thank you for having us, and I'm open to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davina and Zoe. It's always such a pleasure to listen to you. And I think if anybody can see through the presentation, this is about passion. There's such a lot still needs to be done, but you've done so much. And I think we've got to congratulate you in terms of what FlipFlopi has done. We're open to questions. I think one of the questions that came through was the same old question we always get: I need funding. If I cannot tell you how many times we get that question. I literally had to put the phone down on somebody before this presentation, another SME asking me, how do I get funding? There are a lot of lessons you can learn from FlipFlopi. Go through the toolkit, understand about positioning, measurement, management, structure, your partnerships. You heard Davina at the end, they're talking about the different universities, the different funds, working with government, working with other NGOs. It's about networking. It's about positioning yourself in terms of making sure that you are seen. And there's a lot of lessons on the toolkit to be able to do that. Unfortunately, I think we're all very aware of the fact that recycling for the sake of recycling, in other words, collecting and moving product on, is not going to be economically viable. But when you start to look at everything that FlipFlopi has done in terms of the training, the courses, the work that they do in terms of bringing people to the site, the work with regards to how they collect, how they sort, how they separate, how they process, how they manufacture, and making sure, again, from an island perspective, they are very remote. So you cannot transport plastics big distances. You need to do something with it there. So it's looking at the value chains and looking at that. And again, I come back to my first comment, which was this is a social construct. It's about how you position yourself. And even in terms of the measurements and the management of that is critically important with regards to securing funding. So we're open to questions. Please feel free to pop those into the Q&A or into the chat. I don't think there's anything in the Q&A at the moment. No, but you're welcome to do that either there or in the chat. And we can direct those at our speakers. Can they pop their hand up, Christo? Can you unmute people if they need to speak?
Yeah, so I've allowed mics and camera, so anyone that wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and feel free to go ahead. Daniel, go ahead.
Hello, yes, thank you for the nice presentation. So I have a few questions in regard to the correction of the waste. As they said that they have a lot of materials which they correct, but they are unable to recycle. So technically, what happens at the end to such materials? And then my other question is that, so are you focusing just on plastics? Because we also have other materials like glass and other items. And I also want to ask about some of the products which you, at the end, which you make. There are many products which you can make, but how do you sell them? And because sometimes it's difficult to get good market price for recycled products. And so how do you assure the people that whatever you have produced from the recycled material is very well and it's useful to the environment? Also, I want to ask, like, are you just based on Lamu, which is the coast where we have a lot of waste in the oceans? What about other areas around the country? Like in Kenya, we have a lot of landfills, a lot of waste, especially solid waste, which is not well disposed. So how do you also handle that in case if you do? Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. Yes, we're just based in Lamu at the moment. Lamu is home. This is where the boat started. The solution came from, and this is where we're trying to find a solution, but develop something which can be adopted in other areas. And there are a lot of amazing community actors around Kenya. And it's important for us to share the toolkit. So not to replicate their work, but to support by sharing our lessons and learning from what they're doing. But we understand like the scope of the problem is massive. And at the moment, we're just focusing on plastics. After organics is the largest waste item that we do have in Lamu. Organics is often eaten by donkeys. It often has an end use. So we're dealing with plastics. We have community actors who are dealing with glass, and we have collections of metal because they have quite a high value. So in that way, a lot of the items or recyclable items are addressed by different members of the community, and there's still so much scope in terms of plastic. Like you mentioned and I mentioned, there's a lot of unrecyclable material. At the moment, all we can do is collect that, remove them from critical ecosystems, and divert them to landfills where they are safer. But safer is with a quote, because the municipality will often burn this to keep the landfill low. And these are where we're trying to address the problem through policy, because it's beyond our capacity. We don't have the right technology. The right technology might not exist, so we try and pursue policy to fix a broken value chain, because what we're trying to have at the end is a circular economy for all plastic products. I think maybe I answered. Was there something maybe I missed from your question? Oh yeah, in terms of the products, that is still a question that we're trying to find an answer for. So this toolkit is a living website, meaning that we are updating as we're getting more information, as we're learning more. So in terms of finding people to sell products to, this is a market we're still exploring, but it means, again, like Chris said, networking. So we go physically to events, we tell people about our stories, they're able to touch and sit on the furniture. So we're mostly focused on consumer items like chairs and tables, sunbeds, lamps, frames. So testing the market, testing different products, seeing what people like, what people don't like. And it's a lot of trial and error. And we've been lucky enough to have the grant support to make an investment, to make these mistakes, which is not always the case, which is why we're sharing the information, because this is not always the case for everyone. But sharing the story as much as possible and finding those who resonate with the goal that we're trying to achieve. And a big part of claiming we're circular is having the ability for all of these products to be repaired. So it's also one of those things that you can market. We're not selling you something that will break and then it becomes waste again, but it can be continuously repaired so that we can also keep trust with customers. But this is a part we're still exploring, we're still trying to find out, and we'll share as much as possible from our journey.
Thank you. Maybe if you allow me, I ask one more question, sorry. In terms, I saw you have some courses, I don't know, professional, so I just want to know exactly what do they entail, and of course, are they free or are they, you have to pay for it, and is it self-paced or there's a curriculum for that which is tied to a specific period of time?
Yeah, so we had initially developed a 3-month curriculum with different components. So theoretical concepts on circular economy, but also practical concepts on using machinery, building products like carpentry and boat building skills. And these have been divided into, they've created modular concepts. So at the moment, because we do have funding for small scale training, these are offered for free for the community. So these courses are advertised and they're open to people to engage with. But we do have other courses where if there's no funding, a funding organization such as the Red Cross would pay for 20 of their students to come and receive that course. So in that way, we try and serve community needs without a financial barrier, but we also allow the access through payment. They usually have a curriculum, so they're not self-paced and they're in person. And the modular nature means that you can test and try what is most relevant to you. So in your situation, you might not be interested in boat building because perhaps you don't live on the coast, but you might be interested in machinery, and in that way you can choose what is most valuable for you and for your time.
Oh, great responses, Davina, and thank you for your questions, Daniel. All really, really great to get the conversation going. Does anybody else have any questions? Because Davina's going to do a great job of answering them. Reyes?
Stefan? No? Stefan first?
There we go. Thanks, guys. Again, Davina, thank you for a great presentation. Most of all, inspiring. My major question here is, and it might be that I've been caught up in my own little loop here, but it seems that the drive for this is a lot of times coming from Africa, and it comes from Africa because we have the needs and the type of jobs that the circular economy provide are appreciated in Africa because of our high rate of unemployment. But at the same time, a lot of these problems are caused by Europe. So I just don't want it to become an extent where rubbish becomes the next form of charity that the West gives Africa, and then our labor comes up with the solutions. Just that challenge, and what are we doing to change where the rubbish is coming from?
Who wants to answer that?
I can probably give a short answer, and maybe Zoe can add. But in terms of FlipFlopi, I think policy is our main thing. Kenya, thankfully, is not importing so much plastic waste, as far as I know. But what we've uncovered is the textile waste problem, which is linked to the high importation of secondhand clothing, largely from Europe. So we're using policy and advocacy basically to ensure that this is not a new problem that we're going to have to deal with. We see it in like Ghana specifically, and then working at the East African level, because waste is transboundary, to make sure that there are no gaps within other East African countries for waste colonization, waste transfer from higher income countries to East Africa to Africa is a viable thing. So the only way we can address it is policy and advocacy. But maybe Zoe has a bit more insight on that.
Sure, thanks, Davina, and thank you very much for the question. So yeah, at the moment, some plastic waste is being imported from Europe to Africa, but overall, when you look at the total tonnages of waste, it's a tiny amount compared to the amount of waste that's being generated within African countries already. So I think that there's two sides to this. The first is, oh, sorry, there's an alarm going off right above my head suddenly. There's two sides to it. I think, first of all, yes, all countries need to be taking responsibility for their own wastes. And I think what we're seeing from the textiles, let's call it a crisis, a debacle, what you know, is a big problem. Clearly, the amount of textiles that are being you know, imported into countries that don't then have waste management systems for dealing with those textiles at end of life, it is a problem. And what we're seeing more and more now is that countries that are struggling with waste management capacity, they're not looking to attract loads of investment to build big waste management facilities. No, they're regulating upstream. They're saying, no, do you know what? This is too expensive for us to handle here. This isn't our waste. We're not going to have it. So watch this space, because things are happening quite rapidly in the regulatory area. So yeah, it's definitely a moving feast. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, sorry if I don't want to take time, and I see that Batista is waiting, so I apologize for just taking in there again. I'm obviously from the textile industry, and that is the major frustration, because there's a lot of companies trying to do right, maybe not enough at this stage, but that plastic waste generated by textile is a real problem. And with the legislation coming up in Europe now, with the end of life responsibility for producers, I'm just worried that we become an easy opt-out solution that and I don't want to disparage what anybody's doing, but sort of as a nice African face attached to it, and you know, it's also always got to be understood that Africa will try and deal with the issues that we have, but that shouldn't be seen as support to us, you know. And textiles is one of those where the idea that you're sending clothes to a developing country all of a sudden is a good thing for those sending it. You know, I'm just scared that picture gets abused, and we sit with more and more trouble. But thank you very much.
Couldn't agree more, and I think it would be great for you to connect, Stefan. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that. We are out of time, ladies and gents. I do see Mr. Nsingamana from Rwanda has got his hand up. Do we have time for one more question, Krista?
Yeah, we do have time. If people still want to hang on, go ahead. Last question.
Thank you very much. I really congratulate Davina for a great presentation in terms of really, I wish to run from this very wonderful initiative, but on the stage between the idea development in minds and in papers or on a computer to the proper action. An idea is there. You are maybe looking for a grant, but not there. Between the idea, having an idea and starting the first activity, I need to learn that experience from you, because so many among us, we are having different ideas, but that step is the key. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Noel. Do you want to respond to that, Zoe?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I was just actually putting a note in the chat. So if you go to, I'm just going to share my screen one more time quickly, because all of this is in the wonderful toolkit. So I've come to Plastic Recycling Essentials and Enterprise, and here we've got step by step how to work through your business idea. Is it a viable business idea? And then getting started up and launching. So do read those sections, but also, you know, your local outreach, clearly getting the actual plastics in, how you liaise with your community, and then managing your feedstock and your team as well. All of that's in here in the blue section, Plastic Recycling Essentials. So I suggest you please explore that section, and you know, and keep in touch with the FlipFlopi. Keep following them on social media, because they're really good at sharing their expertise and their experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Krista, can you close us off?
I'll close it off. Thank you very much, Chris. I just quickly want to thank Zoe, Davina, and Chris for your time. This was really, like Stefan said, this was an inspirational presentation. It's amazing to see what people can achieve when you just get stuck in and do things. And what stands out for me, Zoe, specifically when you went through the toolkit, how amazing, how it's practical, and it's something that has actually been done. It's not theoretical, it's not textbook knowledge, it's things that has been done, and it's a living document. So really, thank you very much for all the inputs there, Davina, from your guys' team. It's really amazing to see what can be done. So with that, we are already a bit over time. Thanks a lot for everyone that stuck around. I just want to thank again our speakers and everyone that attended. And if you can please take a minute to, I added in the chat the link to just quickly fill in a survey. Let's take less than a minute just to assist us to continuously improve these type of sessions that we want to have in the future, and share these type of valuable resources that people don't know is out there but can be immensely useful. Yeah, so with that, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Follow FlipFlopi Project and follow ACEN online to keep up to date with the circular economy things in Africa. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Like I said, we will share the recording afterwards.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, ACEN.
Take care.
Thanks for hosting us.
Bye.
Well done, Davina. Thank you.